guys, welcome back for episode number 114 of the weekly playback. So this week I only have 2 games to talk about, so I guess we'll just get started. So let's talk about Trolls and Princesses. So this is a 2023 game for 2 to 4 players, designed by Pim Thunborg, and the art is done by Ido Vallis, and it's published by Game Brewer Games. So Game Brewer was going out of business, and they were having a going out of business sale. So I bought a copy from their going out of business sale because all of the games were like a slight percentage off. So I'm not sure if this game is available to purchase now. I think you'd have to go on to like Board Game Geek. There are some copies being sold in the geek market, which, you know, personally, after having played it once, I absolutely loved it, and I played it last night, a 2-player game of it, and I'm already like dying to play it again. Like, I really enjoyed this game. So I'll go over how it plays and show you guys the components to this game. Now, I did go a little bit crazy with organizing the game. So I had recently bought some of these containers to use for another game, and I had containers left over, so I decided to use these containers in storing the components in this game. So any of the containers that you see did not come with this game. So this game is a worker placement game with like tile placement as well. There's set collection going on, and there's hand management and action points. So there's a lot going on in this game, but like it's so satisfying, like when you are able to do the kinds of actions you want to do and get a really good engine going. So there's going to be one main board, and the main board is comprised of different pieces of villages. So it's going to be a circular board. So you're going to have, like, for example, this is one village, and then depending on the number of players, you might have multiple villages. So in a 2-player game, you're going to have 2 villages, and then the rest of the board is just going to be a forest. And I'll go over the different areas on the village board, and then each player has their own player board. And on your own player board, it is divided up into 3 different sections, and then off to the side of your player board on the left side, you're going to be building out your cavern by adding tiles, cave tiles. So it's a very cool game. So let me just get out a player aid, and then we can start talking about the various actions you can take and how the game plays. So there are going to be some cards that are going to be off to the side. So depending, again, on player count, you're going to have a certain number of these, I believe they're called King's cards, off to the side. So you'll have 1 blue card, 1 yellow card, and 2 red cards. So for example, if you in your game manage to get 3 church bells, then you would be able to place a clan token on this and take a king's tile and add it to your cavern. And I'll explain how all of that works. So that is that. There's going to be troll cards that will be out in play, which will, you know, give you certain bonuses if you're able to collect them, and I'll explain how you collect them and how all of that will work. So we'll get to all of that, but I just want to show you an example of a troll card. And some of these will give you end game points, some of them will, like this one for example, some of them will give you an immediate ability. So like for this one for example, which would allow you to immediately place 2 tiles if you claimed it. And almost all of them will give you a square spot where a changeling can go. And we'll get to all of that when I discuss how to play in detail. So in the village, on each castle, you're going to have a castle tile, and I'll explain when you would take a castle tile ability, but I just want to show you some examples. And you'll see in the picture like what it looks like once it's all set up. So game setup, you'll be setting up your village board, you'll be placing out some humans, you'll be placing out princesses in the towers, you'll be placing out some changelings, and some neutral outposts. And then each player on their own board, again, you'll see in the picture, you're going to be placing all of your components where they go. So you'll be covering up some spots on the board. So here you have a troll power track. You'll be covering up some spaces here. You'll be covering up some spaces in your barn where you store cows. So you'll need to uncover those spaces in order to store more cows. And so on. So there's various spaces that will be covered up in the board, but your board will give you some starting spaces. So it'll give you a starting location for a bell, for example. It'll give you a starting location for an outpost and a changeling, and so on. you'll see in each section cauldrons. So you're going to have your own trolls, which you will be placing onto cauldrons, and humans will also get placed onto cauldrons. And when you take actions, you're going to count up your action points, and I'll get into all of that as soon as we start getting into the how to play, which I think will be right now. Oh, but let me just show you some of the player components. So for example, here is a troll, and each person has 5 trolls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. And each person has a certain number of outposts, and if you are able to exchange outposts, your outpost with a neutral one, you might unlock a special ability of some kind. Here are the barn space cover-ups, which you need to remove in order to have more cows. You'll have some changelings that you can exchange for neutral changelings, and yeah. And your power, your ogre, your troll power marker, which will keep track of your troll power over here. So the way this game is played, the first thing you're going to do, so everyone is going to have a stack of cards, and the game will tell you exactly how many you have. The stack of cards will be comprised of day cards, the period between twilight cards, I think it's called, the period between day and night, and then night cards. So for example, here is a night card. Here is a twilight card, like sunset card, I guess I'll call it. And here is a day card. So you're going to have a stack of cards that will have been created at the beginning of the game for each player that will consist of a certain number of day cards, twilight cards, and nighttime cards. Then you're going to draw a hand of 3 cards. And on your turn, you are going to decide which of those 3 cards you want to play. At the end of your turn, you will draw a new card. So the stack of cards, the deck of cards you have is like a timer for the game as well. So, and I'll explain the different actions on the cards here, and that will be good. And let me just make sure I have one of each kind so that I can kind of show you some variety. Okay, here we go. So the first thing you're going to do on your turn is that there's a troll king. So you're going to decide which card you want to play, and then based on the card, that will tell you what you need to do first. So this one doesn't say anything, so you don't need to do anything. But for example, here, this indicates that you can, if there's space available in the tower, place a princess in village number 1. So again, depending on player count, you'll have a certain number of cards, and it'll tell you which village a certain thing needs to go in. So in a 3-player game, you'll have cards that have villages 1, 2, and 3. In a 4-player game, you'll have villages that have numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. In a 2-player game, you're only going to have 2 villages, so you'll have cards that say 1 and 2s on top of them. And that will indicate which village you need to place something in. So for example, this one, you would need to place a changeling in village 1. That's the first thing you would do, as indicated by the top half of the card. So the villages can hold an unlimited number of changelings and humans, but princesses are limited to 1 per tower. And that's because princesses are worth a lot of points. So, you know, and I'll explain how you get a princess, and once a princess has vacated a tower, then you'll want to try to play a card where you can put out a new princess in the tower for you to later capture and place into your cavern on a princess space. And I'll go over the tiles and stuff. So once the game starts, you're going to have a row of cavern tiles available for you to collect. 2 different rows, like one's just regular cave tiles, another row is of king's tiles, and I'll explain how you get those. Again, you'll have the king's cards, which you are trying to achieve those objectives, which will allow you to pick up a king's tile, which is one of the ways you can get them. And you'll also have a row of troll cards, which I've kind of already gone over what those do. So on your turn, you'll decide which card you want to play, and then do the top section. And then the bottom section indicates where, either on your own player board or on the village, the troll king will go. So this card indicates that the troll king must be placed into a village, but this one indicates that it needs to be placed in this section of your player board. So again, there are 3 sections of the player board. So this one indicates that it needs to go in this section, as you can see. So you're going to look at the highlighted section and place the troll king into that section. Then you're going to move a troll. Now the rule book was not very clear on this, so I had to watch a couple of videos quickly in order to determine how in the first few turns you actually end up getting trolls onto your board. So because you start with the game with the trolls off to the side. So you have 5 trolls and they start off of your board. So throughout the game, you're going to need to get them onto your board. So basically for your first 5 turns, you're going to be putting trolls onto your board. I mean, you don't have to. Like for example, for your 3rd turn, you can decide not to bring out a 3rd troll onto your board and instead move one of the trolls that's already there. But there are some kinds of restrictions as well about which troll you can move and which kinds of actions you can take. So after you play a card, you get 2 troll turns, 2 troll actions. So you're going to move a troll and then take your actions. So you can move a troll from one area to another, and that includes the village. And then depending on where you move to, that determines which actions you can take. So for example, if you moved a troll to this area, that would determine which actions you can take, and it tells you how many action points each action would cost you. So if you had 3 trolls in this section, for example, you could spend all 3 action points to do the top action in order to get 2 new tiles to add to your cave network. Or you can split them up. For example, you can spend 2 action points to do this action and then 1 action point to activate a king's tile. And your board starts with 1 king's tile available, and this one indicates that you can just have a free troll movement. So you're going to count up action points. And if you are taking an action where the troll king is present, that will give you 1 additional action point. So let me just show you the troll king. So basically, this is the Troll King, and it's a way for you to kind of also keep track of whose turn it is, because whoever's turn it is, they're going to be moving this Troll King according to the card that they played. So the Troll King might be somewhere on your board, or he might be in the village. So you're going to count up your action points and then take the action of where you just moved your troll. So up here, for example, you have certain actions available, like this one would cost a cow and 3 action points, and you can swap one of your outposts with a neutral outpost on the main board, and you want to do that because by doing that you can uncover one of these spaces where the outposts were, and that would allow you to mine more. So these are mining actions. So for example, if you were in this section, you can spend 3 action points in order to build out your cavern. You can spend 2 action points in order to mine gold, and if you had removed an outpost from there, you would be able to mine 2 gold. You can spend 1 action point in order to mine obsidian, or you can use 1 action point in order to activate a king's tile. One thing I learned that we did do wrong is when you're doing a troll action, and you'll get 2 per turn, you can only use the king's tile once. You cannot do that multiple times. So that was a mistake we made in the game I played, which I learned after we played, because those king's tiles can be quite powerful. And we should have known that you can do it only once because it's actually indicated right there. But did not notice that and just overlooked it. And we were activating king's tiles more than once. So yeah. I feel like I did a lot more than my opponent, and I still lost though. I lost by 4 points, but he did a fair amount as well, so it's fine. So those are so that's like the mining area of the board. This is the area of the board where you can, this was the mining area. I misunderstood. I misspoke. That's mining diamonds, not adding new tiles. Adding new tiles is up here. So this is the mining area of the board where you're going to mine for diamonds, gold, obsidian, or you can spend 1 action point once on that troll action in order to activate a king's tile. So that's the mining area of the board. This area of the board is where you can swap outposts, you can add new tiles to your cavern network, and that also costs 1 obsidian and 2 action points. This will allow you to refresh the row of cave tiles, and this will allow you to again activate a king's tile. And then down here you have a section where you can refill all of the spaces in your network with a certain type of resource. So as you're building out your network, you're going to be making various connections, or trying to at least. So for example, if in your network you connected these two halves, you now have a space where you can put gold out when you refill your network with resources that you can then mine later. And each person's board does start with some resources on it that will be available for you to mine as well. So everyone does start with some resources, and you do start with some resources as indicated in the top right corner of your board that you begin the game with. And it's, you know, variable. So each person's board is going to be a little bit different. So you can refresh the row of cave tiles, and then sorry, we were on this section. So this one will allow you to choose one resource and refill all of the resource spaces in your network. This action would allow you to get some troll power, which you're going to need because you spend it in various areas. This one will allow you to pick up a troll card. This would allow you to refresh the troll cards. Now, if you're in the main village, if you moved a troll to a village, then you can take village actions, and each person's player aid indicates all of the village actions available. Now you'll see the top three, those top three actions, you can use action points from your own trolls and opponent's trolls. So if your opponent has trolls in a village and you have trolls in a village, you would count up both of your guys' trolls to determine how many action points you have. And with those action points, you can take the top three actions. So the top three actions are, so the first one costs 5 action points plus 2 troll power and 1 diamond, and that will allow you to capture a princess and take a king's tile from the row of king's tiles and add it to your network. In order to capture a princess, though, you have to have a bed available in your cave network in order to place her in that bed. So the princess will automatically go onto a bed. If you don't have a bed available for her, you cannot take that action. The next action available up there is to capture a bell. And I'll explain why you want to capture bells, because you will get points for that. So as you can see, that costs 4 action points and 3 obsidian in order to capture a bell from the village. And there are 3 bells available in each village for a player to capture. The next action will allow you to take the castle action, and that costs 3 action points, but immediately you must return all the trolls from the village then back to somewhere on your player board, and you can determine where you want to put them in your own player area. The bottom 3 actions, you can only use action points that belong to you. So this one, for example, will allow you to swap a changeling, which you probably want to do at least once per game. That will unlock a space on your board of some kind, like some kind of a benefit, and changelings will be part of a set collection, which will get you points at the end of the game. The next one allows you to take a human, and then finally the last one allows you to take a cow. So as you can see, different actions cost different things. Like for some actions you need troll power, for some you need diamonds, for some you need obsidian, for some you need cows. Like for example here, if you want to build an outpost, you need a cow and 3 action points. So again, you're going to count up all the trolls in an area, and humans contribute to power, to action points. So if you have a human, that would add to your action points. So let's suppose I had 2 humans, a king troll, and one of my own trolls in a section. That would be 4 action points. So then you can divvy up the action points as you want in the area that you're in. So you're going to do this twice on your turn. So you're going to get 2 troll actions. So basically you'll get 2 troll phases. Let's call them phases. After each phase though, you can replenish the display with more cards or tiles if you took any. So after troll phase 1, if you took any tiles or cards, you can immediately replenish them, and then same after troll phase 2. And then you will draw a card, and that is the end of your turn, and then it goes to the next player. So basically you are building up a really good engine between all of your tiles, your troll cards, and your own player board by unlocking certain bonuses, unlocking more spaces on your player board by swapping things with the neutral ones on the village board, and so on. Really fun game. I really enjoyed it. It's one of those games where you can really, if you suffer from AP, I can see this being a very AP inducing game, because you might sit there and try to figure out, like, okay, you'll be looking at your hand of cards before it's the next player's turn and deciding which one you want to play. Like, again, the card might show you something like this. It'll show you like, okay, you have to put a princess in village 2, and then the troll king will go in this section of the board. So then you'll be thinking, okay, if I have the troll king in this section of the board, that's already 1 troll power, 1 action point in that section. So if I move another troll there, then I'd have 2 action points, and then you're looking at the available actions, trying to map out what you can do on each turn. And again, you have 2 troll phases in each turn where you're counting up action points. There is a specific rule that you cannot use the same troll twice. So let me just go over that rule just very quickly. Let's see. Oh yeah, and when you move a troll king, he does not occupy a cauldron. And if you want to move a troll to a cauldron on the village and there isn't one available, you can bump out another player's troll from the village and remove him from the village. So you can bump other people's trolls. So I know that there was a rule about moving trolls and how you can't like do the same troll twice or something like that. I can't find it right now. Yeah, I can't find the rule, but I believe there's a rule that states that you cannot move the same troll twice, or you cannot activate like the same location or something like that. I know it was here somewhere. But yeah, so there are some minor restrictions, but it's not really terrible. Like you'll still be able to do, as the game starts progressing, you'll be able to do what you want to do. And the rule book is great. It has like a glossary of all the different kinds of king's tiles, for example, telling you what those do. It has a glossary for victory cave tiles, which will give you end of game points. It has a glossary for troll cards and king's cards. And then of course there's an iconography on the back, which is super great. So the game end will of course end once all the players have played all of their cards, because again, that deck of cards is timed. So once you've finished your deck of cards, once everyone has finished their deck of cards, the game will end. And then you'll add up your points. So when you're adding up your points, you will get first, you look at how many churches, changelings, and outposts you have collected. So you'll get 15 victory points for each set of 3 different items. So that's why you definitely want to try to get at least 1 outpost and 1 changeling and 1 church bell. Because I found that with my opponent, he had, I believe, 1 full set and then 2 sets of 2, or 1 set of 2 and then 2 sets of 2 remaining items. So 15 victory points for each set of 3 different items, then 9 victory points for 2 different items, and then 4 victory points for each remaining item. So you'll end up getting a lot of points from that. And I did not get a lot of points from that. I only had 1 set of 2 different items because I did not swap a changeling of mine with a neutral changeling from the village. So I suffered in points there, and if I had gotten a changeling at some point, then I probably would have won. Princesses are worth 7 points each, and then for each king's tile you have in your area, you will get 3 points. Each human you manage to acquire or hire, rather, will give you 1 point. Blue cave tiles, which again are like end game scoring tiles, you'll get the points as indicated on those. And then if your troll cards have any end game scoring, you'll get the points from them. And then whoever has the most points will win. So yeah, super cool game. I absolutely love this game. I thought it was really cool, like how you are building out your own network, and with your own network, you're creating a really cool engine. I thought how it was really cool how you can like use other players' trolls on the village board and kind of try to predict what they might do, because there were instances where, for example, I was prepping up, for a turn and there was no princess in a certain village, and it was towards the end of the game and I only had village 1 cards, and most of my people were in that village, most of my trolls were in that village, but I didn't have any cards that would allow me to put out a new princess. So I had to like pray that maybe my opponent will put out a princess. Like if a card he plays might have a princess on it, maybe I'll get lucky and he'll put out a princess. And he did, so I was able to capture 1 more princess. But you're kind of trying to predict and what the opponent might do, whether he'll add some trolls to a certain village, which will increase action points, whether that means he'll capture a princess and you need to prepare to put out a new princess. Like there's all of that going on. It's so much fun. It's so much fun to build out your network of caves, and there are placement rules as well about connecting them again and creating those new spots where resources will appear, generate if you do the generation action, and then you can mine those resources. There are certain tiles though that only have one connection. So for example, blue victory tiles only have one connection, but other tiles can connect on all different sides, which is nice. So you're not actually traveling through the cave. Like when I first started setting up the game, I thought like we might be traveling through the cave. You're not actually traveling through the cave. You're just making connections so that hopefully you can generate those resources that you then want to mine throughout the game. But yeah, super fun game with super cool components. So the princesses come on these little stands, so they'll be standing on your player board. I kind of wish the cows had come with those as well. I might actually just buy some from like an arts and crafts store if they sell them, so that I can make the cows stand up too, because I think that that would be really cool, because otherwise the cows just lie down in the barn. So I'm going to try to buy those little standees for the cows as well. And I have the basic version of this game. There is a deluxe version where it comes with deluxe cows and deluxe princesses and all of that. This is just the basic standard version, but even in the standard version, the resources are super nice. So those are the obsidian, gold, and diamonds. Yeah, and again, everything else is just really great. So yeah, I highly recommend this game. I really enjoyed it. So if you enjoy tile placement and worker placement games and action selection, because in this game you're definitely going to be doing like a lot of programming in your head and mathing actions out, and if you like games like that, then I would highly recommend Trolls and Princesses if you can find it. And again, this publisher has gone out of business or is in the process of going out of business, so you'll need to look on retailer websites and secondhand market websites to try to find this game if you want it. So yes, that was Trolls and Princesses. So let's move on. So the other game I played recently is Tether. So this is a game that I backed on Kickstarter. It is a 2024 game for 2 to 4 players, designed by Mark McGee, and the art is done by Eric Hibbler, and it's published by How to Steam Broccoli. So it says 2 to 4 players, but honestly, the 4-player version of this is like a team variant. I personally think it's just a 2-player game. I do not think you'd want to play this as a 4-player game. So I play this as a 2-player game, and this is just a card placement game. So you're going to be placing cards. And it's hand management. So each person has their own score tracker where you'll be keeping track of points, because you do need to keep track of points as the game is being played. And I think I backed like some deluxe version of this game, so I'm not sure that every copy comes with the score tracker. And then you're going to just have a bunch of different cards with different numbers on them. So an astronaut. So as you'll see, on one side there's going to be one number, but then if you flip it over, it's another number. So when you are dealt a hand of cards and each person starts the game with 5 cards, you can orient these cards in your hand in any direction you like, and until they're played, they're not final. So for example, if I had this card in my hand, it could be either a 56 or a 65, and until it's actually played, I can decide which number it'll be. So one person is going to be playing cards vertically, the other person is going to be playing cards horizontally. So if you're a vertical person, you are going to want to place cards that are in numerical order like this. So for example, you would put I believe the lower number for vertical goes on the bottom. So, and you sit across from each other. So the person, if they had these cards in their hand, they could put out a 42 and then a 43 on top of it. Now, if I'm the horizontal player, then I would see this and I could put, like, for example, so this is what the vertical player is going to see, but I, as the horizontal player, am going to see this because I'm sitting opposite of him. So what I'm going to see is the number 24 and 34. So if I wanted to, I could put a 23 here, or I could put a 33 here. So the vertical player and horizontal player are playing differently. So the horizontal player is putting cards by the long edge next to each other, and the vertical player is putting cards next to each other by the short edge. And you are always going from you're always going in consecutive numbers, so you have to try to put cards together that are consecutive, and you can move groups around. So when it's your turn, you can play a card from your hand and then connect. and you can connect other cards from your hand. There's going to be some adrift cards. The game starts with 3 astronauts that are just adrift, so you can pick up cards from those to add if they match up, and you're able to place them. And you can also connect existing groups. So if there's a group, for example, of in this instance 42 and 43, and then this vertical player later sees a set of cards that's 40 and 41, he can like, let's suppose he was playing this and there was already a group of 40 and 41, he can take that group and connect it. So if you play cards, you can only add to cards the same like kind of network as the cards you just played. So you cannot like start adding to other groups, even if there are other groups and you may have cards that work with those groups. You can only work off of the set of cards that you have just played. So again, you can play as many cards from your hand as you're able to and connect groups to the cards you just played, as long as it goes back to the card you just played. But if you cannot play cards, then you will set an astronaut adrift, which means you'll take a card from your hand and put it aside on the table in the adrift astronaut section, and then draw 1 card. And then regardless of whether you played cards from your hand into the area or you set an astronaut adrift, you'll draw a card at the end of your turn if you have fewer than 6 cards. So how do you score in this game? So whenever there's a grouping that has a minimum of 6 cards in it, you're going to score immediately once that group has 6 cards. And both players are going to score. So as the vertical player, you're going to see how tall that group is, and you're going to get 1 point for each level of that group. For the horizontal player, you're going to see how wide that group is and get 1 point for each section in that group for how wide it is, and then you'll add up your points into your point tracker. Now you cannot score that group again until it reaches the next threshold. The next threshold is 10 cards in that group, and then the final threshold is 14 cards, which would end the game as well. Once a group reaches 14 cards, you will score it, and then whoever has the most points will win. The other ways in which this game can end are, so again, you score a large group with 14 cards, or one player has at least 6 points more than the other, or the deck is exhausted and each player has 1 last turn, and then whoever has the most points will win. So it's kind of a little weird, interesting game in which you have to sit opposite of each other. So you cannot make this game work while sitting side by side. It would get really confusing. And the cards you see are going to be different than the cards your opponent sees. Like, you are really looking at different numbers. Like, I'm looking at the numbers that are facing me. My opponent is looking at the numbers that are facing him. And my opponent is placing cards vertically and I'm placing cards horizontally. So you're kind of doing different things, but in the end, it actually really works out. Like, even when you connect groups together, the numbers that are on the other sides end up working out sometimes. And it's just really interesting how it does that. So yeah, it's just a really interesting concept. And again, I would only recommend this at 2 players. I would not recommend it at more than 2 players. But you definitely do need a lot of table space for this. Like, I probably posted pictures, but as you can see, at one point in time, we had a lot of different groups going. So you definitely need a lot of space in order to play this game. So yeah, so if you're just looking for some kind of a filler game for 2 players and you enjoy, card games like that, then I would recommend Tether. And again, this is a game I backed on Kickstarter. So yeah, so those are the 2 games I played in the last week. So let's move on. So let's go on to games that I have received. So I already showed you Trolls and Princesses, which I bought from Game Brewers going out of business sale. And I already showed you Tether, which is a game I backed on Kickstarter, which arrived recently. So the only other thing I purchased from Game Brewers going out of business sale was the expansion to Paris. So I already own the game Paris, which I purchased from a board game store in Florida, actually. This was years ago, back in 2021. So I purchased the expansion to Paris. So it just comes with additional tiles and stuff like that. Like, it's been so long since I've played this game. In fact, I might have played it even before I started shooting these weekly playback videos. Like, I honestly cannot even remember. So it's been a very long time. So yeah, and then it just comes with an explanation of the new tiles. So that was the only other thing I purchased. I do like these designers a lot, Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling. So yeah, so I definitely wanted the expansion for Paris. It just adds a couple more tiles. So it's not like a huge expansion. So I definitely think it's a playable expansion. Like, it's not going to be daunting to try to add this to the game, you know? So so yeah, like, it's not like an expansion where I feel like you'll have to learn a really huge new set of rules or something like that. So yeah, so that is the only other thing that arrived recently. So let's go on to games that I'm backing, and I went a little bit Kickstarter crazy. So I might need to cancel some stuff. And I don't, you know, I know it's a bit crazy that I do that, where I back stuff and then I end up canceling it later. But yeah, so let's talk about what I'm backing. So I'm backing this game called Ginza Retro Cafe board game made in Japan. So this is a Japanese game, cafe game. It just looked super duper cute. I was almost tempted to add on their previous games, but I resisted. So I'm proud of myself for resisting adding on the extra stuff. But yeah, it's a super cute game, and it's got 4 days to go. So by the time you guys are watching this, because I'm shooting this on a Saturday, it'll probably have 2 days left, but I'll leave a link below. So I'm just backing just the game, so none of the additional stuff. And it's a Japanese game, and it's about $40. I think shipping might be a bit much though. So yeah. So if you've taken a look at this, let me know what you think about this. I'm wondering if I should cancel and see if maybe they come to Essen, because if they come to Essen, maybe I can just pick it up. I doubt it'll be ready by this October, but maybe the following October. So I'm going to look into that, and maybe I'll end up canceling, depending on whether or not they'll be at Essen. The other game I'm backing, oh sorry, you know what, Ginza Retro Cafe, I don't think that there was other stuff to add on. I'm getting that confused with the campaign I'm just about to talk about. So the other game I'm backing is Piri Piri Summoners, handcrafted wooden meeple strategy game. This just kind of popped up on my Kickstarter, like it was in the recommended suggestions. Like, I had never seen this game before. I didn't know anything about it, but it is so freaking cute. Like, oh my god, these handcrafted wooden player pieces are just so freaking adorable. Like, I just could not resist. So yeah, so this also has 4 days to go. So by the time you're watching it, probably 2 days left. And this is the campaign where they have as add-ons their previous games, which I looked them up. I was like, I'm not really into those. Like, I don't really need those. It's fine. Like, they do look cool. And at one point, I remember when one of those previous games was on Kickstarter, I had considered backing it, but I did not. But this one, I just cannot resist those hand-carved animals. They are just so adorable. So I am backing just the Early Bird Elite Summoner package, which also comes with a nice wooden box to store the cards, and you can display the animals on top of it. So yeah, so that's about, oh, it's expensive. It's $85. So this is from Hong Kong. So yeah, so HK, I believe, is Hong Kong. So there's only one left of this pledge level, the early bird one. So I think if you want this level, it might be finished by the time this video is up. So yes, I'm backing that because those animals are just so cute. What else am I backing? Something I forgot to mention in the last video, which I'm backing, is All Plays game bag with the wheels. So rolling board game bags. And playmat. I might cancel the playmat because right now I'm backing at the playmat level, and I'm like, do I really need that playmat? No. Like, on my board game table, I have this like neoprene mat, which I bought from Joann Fabrics for really cheap, and it does the job well. So do I really need a playmat? No. Like, they're super cool, and they're done by like well-known board game artists. Oh, and a new one was revealed. Ooh, okay, I did not say the new one before, but that one is really cool. So, but anyway, I really want the rolling bag because having been to Essen last year, I borrowed my friend's All Play game bag, which was really kind of him to lend to me, and it was really great for storing games. But oh my god, like, carrying that filled with games throughout the airports was a huge pain, like just so painful, like literally painful, like, you know, like having to carry such a heavy bag for long distances, just too much. So I, for the longest time in my mind, I was like, why don't they come out with rolling game bags? And finally they have a rolling game bag. Like, I'm like, it took them long enough to come out with this, right? So backing that, unfortunately, of course, it's not going to deliver by the time Essen rolls around in October, because the estimated delivery is December 2024. So unfortunately, I will still have to suffer at Essen, but maybe I can do a really good job like I did with UKGE and not come back with a lot of stuff. We'll see. So yeah, so I'm backing for the rolling bag, and then I am backing Yonder at the $1 pledge level so that I can get my production copy of Yonder, which is back here. So if you want to know how to play that, you can of course go to my overview video or the previous weekly, like one of the previous weekly playbacks where I discussed the game in detail. Absolutely love Yonder. So, of course, Hakan Gardner is one of my favorite designers. And if you want to back the game, please use the link below, which is my reference link, so that the publisher can see that my content, is valuable for them. And sends backers their way. So I'm backing Yonder at the $1 level to get my production copy. I'm backing Luthier at the $1 level to get my production copy. And then, of course, Brink for the same. So those are the things that I am backing. So again, I may reconsider and cancel something, just like previously I was backing a game and now I don't even remember which game I was backing, and then I ended up canceling it later, which is crazy, I know, because whenever I talk about a game and I'm like super excited about it, and then after I've canceled it, I can't even remember which game it was. So I know I canceled something recently that I was backing, and I honestly don't even remember what it was now, but yeah, so that's something that happens. So let's move on. So those are games that have arrived or that I am backing. So I guess let's talk about cons. So I mentioned in the last video that, some of my friends were, trying to convince me to come to Gen Con, and I decided against it because I'm definitely going to go to Essen. So I think, if I'm planning on going to Essen, even though I'll have my accommodations and entrance into Essen paid for by Dronda Games, which is the publisher I'm going to be working for again, I still need to, of course, pay for my own ticket there, and of course all the other expenses like food expenses and stuff like that. So that will cost money. So I would rather just save my money for Essen rather than go to Gen Con. And also I decided if I'm spending all this money flying over to Europe again, that I should, check out a city that I haven't seen before. So I'm planning on, spending like maybe 2 days in Copenhagen before heading over to Germany. So Copenhagen is a city that I've never seen before, and I've heard it's pretty cool. So I thought it would be nice to check out. So I'm gonna do that. So that's why I decided no Gen Con for me yet again. I've never been to Gen Con. FlagCon, planning is coming along. So again, I'll leave the link below. So please purchase your tickets for FlagCon. I'll be there and we can play games together when I'm not working at the library or whatever, tasks I'm assigned to. What else? Cats. So Girly is still missing. So if you guys watched my last video, you know that one of the cats who I really, really love is missing. And then it occurred to me that a lot of cats are missing. So I was thinking about colony number 2, and I was thinking back to even like maybe 2 months ago even, and there were so many more cats than there are now. And I'm like, where did all these cats go? Like during the winter time, there were so many cats. There were like all these all black cats. There were more tortoiseshell cats, there were more calico cats, and now we're down to 0 calicos, because the one calico was the mother of the kittens and she's been trapped, so the kittens and the mother were trapped. But there were at least like 2 other calicos, one of them being Girly, and they're gone. There's only 1 tortie left. The other tortoises, no idea where they are, they're gone. Let's see, the all black cats are gone. There was a couple of all black cats. My kitten's father is still there and his mother. So Zaytun's father and mother are still there. So I think that they're like permanent residents in the colony, which I'm really happy about. So it would make me really sad if my kitten's father like left too, but I'm happy that I still get to see him every single day. So him and his mother are super cute. They're always cuddling together. They're always like side by side. They're like a bonded pair. They're just really adorable. And I would be devastated if anything happened to Zaytun's parents. So they're fixed and they're happy in the colony. So I'm just really sad. Like, I don't know where these animals went. So I, reached out to the organization that I work with to get them trapped and then spayed and neutered. And they're like, that's just the way it is. They're like, number one, you might be coming at a time where they're just not there anymore. Like maybe they've changed their schedule, which is weird because when cats know that they have a regular feeder, especially Girly knew me. Like I used to play with her. I was able to pet her even and play with her. And she's the one who would always start eating the wet food as I'm putting it onto the plate. So Girly knows me. Like she would run up to me and follow me around as I'm cleaning up the area before I actually start putting food onto the plate. So she knows, and she knows when I would come there every day. So but the organization was like, yeah, sometimes cats' schedules change. Maybe they have another feeding source. Maybe they've been, decided to leave because there's too much competition for food. Like, there's all these explanations for why these cats might not be there anymore. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like, I've, put out so many shelters in this colony. There's a lot of shelters in this colony for the cats to, stay in when it gets cold. It's a whole nice little village. There's like some shelters that previous organizations had put there as well, which are not as nice as the wooden ones I built, but still there's like a lot more, spaces for these cats to sleep. I feed them so much food. Like I spend so much money on cat food every day. Like I fill up several big bowls of dry food and then, give them 4 cans of wet food daily. Like they get a lot of food. So in, the big Friskies cans, so I really don't understand where they went, and it just makes me sad and worried. So that is the cat update, I guess. Yeah, so that's that. So let's move on. So let's have our fiction discussion first, fiction book discussion first, like we did last week. So we were supposed to read chapter 2 of this book, and I really wasn't sure where it was going to go. So if you guys read chapter 2, you can listen so that, you can participate, but I don't want to spoil the book for anyone. So if you haven't read it, do not listen to this section. So yeah, first of all, I don't know which section of the department store I'd want to work in. So I still don't know my answer to that question. I think I'll wait a little bit until I learn a bit more about the different areas. But I think the first floor sounded kind of cool since they sell like high-end popular or limited edition items. But there was kind of different people working on each section, which was a little bit weird. Some of them seemed a little bit weird. So I don't know. I don't know where I'd want to work, to be honest. But anyway, let's move on to discussion of chapter 2. So this one focused kind of on this one girl who would want to dream about her crush all the time. And then you get a little bit of an insight into the crush as well, the guy. So first of all, when I first started reading this chapter, I still was trying to get a sense of what this world is like. And now I'm starting to wonder if this dream department store is just kind of in existence in humans' subconscious, and the humans in this book, who are the ones doing the dreaming, are actually real in like the real world. Like, does that make sense? Because obviously the department store world where Penny works and all these other people in the department store work is very fictionalized. Like you have talking animals like Assam. You have like, like Flutter, like keeping track of people's emotions in like liquid form, and that's how they pay for their dreams in this department store. Like very bizarre concept that you learn about in chapter 2. Like I thought that was a little bit weird, and maybe just a bit too much for me. Like I'm just like, but yeah, like, so I'm starting to wonder if this book is really about like humans, and then we visit this dream department store in our subconscious and decide which dream we want to participate in, whether the humans are existing still in like a real world without all of this fantasy. So I'm starting to think that that's what that is, because I don't think that the whole world is a fantasy world. Like I don't think we're existing in a world where the customers in chapter 2 are in a world with talking animals as well. So that's my, thought about the world. Let me know if you agree or disagree. But in chapter 2, I thought it was, it was interesting, like the insights that the employees in the department store kind of made about, this girl like wanting to dream about her crush all the time, and they're talking about whether it's good or bad for her. And then the guy, like you learn that the guy would come in, and when he first had a big breakup a few years ago, he wanted to dream about his ex, and then for the longest time he didn't have any dreams about his ex. And then more recently he came in and requested to have a dream about his ex-girlfriend to see whether or not he had gotten over her. Like, I thought that was really interesting. It went in a direction that I totally was not anticipating. So I thought that that was pretty cool. I can't say that I would always want to dream about my crush if I, had a major crush, because like they kind of explained in the chapter, it would be kind of hard to deal with. Like, if you're always dreaming about a person that you like, and then you have to wake up in reality and you are not with that person, like, that would kind of suck. So unrequited love is, a hard thing to deal with. And I've been there, and I'm sure everyone has been there as well. So it's no fun. So I don't know. So I think that that was kind of an insightful thing in this chapter. Like, yeah, that the employees of the dream store were like, yeah, maybe it's not such a great idea to let her have her dream about her crush every single night. But here, this girl, she would, go in her subconscious to the dream store and request a dream about her crush. But, again, spoiler alert, as you learn in the very end, the crush and that girl end up getting together in the end. And it's, her dreams that actually ended up kind of giving her the courage to ask him out. So it was just a very interesting little snippet. I thought it was like a nice little snippet into two people's lives and the dream store, and how the dream store, works, interacts with these people's lives. And I did not expect the book to go in that kind of a direction, so I really enjoyed that chapter a lot. And now I'm curious about how it'll go in future chapters, and whether we'll still get like little snippets into people's lives in different ways in this book. So I thought that was really cool. So let me know what you thought about chapter 2, and whether you would want to have a dream about your crush every single night if you have a crush. I don't think I would want to do that. I think it's just, it would be painful. So that was chapter 2. So for next week, read chapter 3. So let's move on. So for our nonfiction book, we were supposed to read like around the first half of chapter 2. So up to the end of page 33. So this chapter starts to discuss a lot about how the identity of Palestinians was kind of taking shape. Like, their identity always existed, but it's talking a lot about World War I, and colonialism, and how that, played a role in what was happening to the Palestinians. So, this book is very heavy. This is like an academic book. So, I understand it's not easy reading. So, we'll go a bit slowly with it, because I understand it's a lot for, to read, especially if you're not used to reading these kinds of books. Like, I've read books like this book I did not read when I was in grad school. I read this a few years ago when it first came out, but it's been a while. But I used to read books like this all the time when I was in grad school for Middle Eastern studies. So but I understand if you're not used to it, it can be a little bit, unenjoyable maybe even. So I don't think these are books really meant to be enjoyed. They're educational and informative books, right? So just some notes that I took for chapter 2, or the first half of it rather. So first of all, the Balfour Declaration, right? So if you've been following news of Palestine, you would hear a lot about the Balfour Declaration, which I'll read it right now. So he said, and this is the guy who worked for the British government. He was the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, Arthur James Balfour, and he said on November 2nd, 1917, His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of non-existing Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. So the author very correctly points out that the Declaration doesn't even refer to Palestinians as Palestinians. It refers to them as the existing non-Jewish communities. So it's already trying to delegitimize their existence and claim that there is no Palestinian population there. And then furthermore, it's stating that it promises only civil and religious rights to the pre-existing population, not political or national rights. So this right there, I mean, very clearly you can see in the rest of this chapter that we read, this is very much a colonialist ideology. It's colonialism that is happening. It's not just people returning to their birthright, like land that they believe was given to them by God. It's people going to a land and colonizing that land. And you can see how the British facilitated this throughout this chapter. So let's see. Yeah, so why did the British do this? So like one of the reasons is an anti-Semitic wish to reduce Jewish immigration to Britain. But then it also says, which is very true, and Britain primarily desired control over Palestine for geopolitical strategic reasons that antedated World War I and that had only been reinforced by wartime events. So as you go through the rest of the chapter, you see what else is happening in the region, right? You see what's happening in Iraq and Syria and elsewhere. So you can see that, colonialism was happening. The British were trying to take control, and the French were trying to take control of neighboring Arab regions. So it was disastrous. And one part that I found interesting in this chapter was it says, an article was written at some point about, the Palestinians kind of reacting to what was happening to their land, to the influx of Jewish immigrants. And so there's an author who wrote an article, and the author of this book says the title of the editorial summed up the gravity of Al-Issa's warning: strangers in our own land, our drowsiness and their alertness. So that section of the chapter talks about how Palestinians maybe were not grasping the gravity of the situation as it was happening. And there's a number of reasons for this. As you can see, like at one point they aren't allowed to print newspapers anymore, and there's like an issue with them not getting the resources they needed even to print newspapers to keep the population informed of what is happening. So World War I was affecting a lot of that, and the British coming in and taking control was affecting a lot of them getting news out about Zionism. But the strangers in our own land, our drowsiness and their alertness kind of reminded me of that, when idiom of, frogs boiling in a pot of water, where the water is slowly getting hotter and hotter, and the frogs don't realize they're getting boiled alive, because when they're first put into the pot, the water is not hot, and the temperature is slowly rising, and they're not realizing how dangerous it is becoming for them until it's too freaking late. So I guess as we'll continue to read on, we'll see, how, things went on. I mean, obviously it's not a perfect analogy, because they did realize at this time that things were really bad and going to get worse, but, kind of a similar, the analogy works a little bit maybe. Let's see. Another thing that the author notes is Palestinian identity and nationalism are all too often seen to be no more than recent expressions of an unreasoning, if not fanatical, opposition to Jewish national self-determination. So that is something we see today. Like, you see a lot of Zionists saying today, there's no such thing as Palestinians. They're only saying they're Palestinian because they're anti-Semitic and blah, 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 blah. Like, no, there was a Palestine, maybe not an official Palestine state, just as there were not many official lines drawn back then, but that does not mean that Palestine did not exist. That does not mean that Palestinians did not exist. They referred to themselves as Palestinians even back then. But you see all too often, even right now, Zionists claiming that Palestinians didn't exist and that their identity is simply a reaction to Zionism, and claiming that the Palestinian identity is anti-Semitic in that sense. No, it is not anti-Semitic, and it is not simply in reaction to Zionism. He notes that, the Palestinian identity included love of country, a desire to improve society, religious attachment to Palestine, and opposition to European control. So again, you get a little bit of discussion about Palestinian identity. And then you learn about what was happening in the other areas, the other Arab nation states that were, happening at that same time around that area. So Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. And then it says, just like Zionism, Palestinian and other Arab national identities were modern and contingent, a product of late 19th and 20th century circumstances, not eternal and immutable. And then it talks about the efforts that the Palestinians made to, try to, keep their land and try to have more autonomy and more control. So there was these congresses that happened, a series of 7 Palestine Arab congresses that happened from 1919 until 1928. But, as he notes, it was a dialogue of the deaf. Just like today, do Palestinians have a voice? They're often ignored in the world theater, so just like today. And then it talks about how popular dissatisfaction with British support for Zionist aspirations exploded into demonstrations, strikes, and riots, with violence flaring notably in 1920, 21, and 29. Each episode more intense than the previous one. So something I saw recently on Twitter that kind of goes along with this is if you want to see an end to Palestinian violence, you need to see an end to global silence. Why is there violence in this region? And one of the things that Israel is getting absolutely wrong is if it wants to exterminate Hamas, it is going about it in all the wrong ways. You are not going to exterminate Hamas when you decimate an entire population, when you leave so many children orphaned, when you leave so many children and babies with amputations. Do you honestly think that they're not going to grow up to hate the state of Israel? Do you honestly think that they're going to grow up and be like, oh yeah, oh well, we were victims of a genocide, my parents and brothers and sisters were all killed by Israel, oh well, I'm not going to do anything about it? No, fuck no, of course they're going to fight back. Any person whose life has been destroyed like that is going to fucking fight back. And just like Israel claims it has the right to self-defense, Palestinians have the right to self-defense. They are an occupied people and they are going to fucking fight back. So if you want to see an end to violence, you need to see an end to global silence. You need to see an end to the silence of this occupation. You need to see an end to the world's silence of this apartheid state and this subjugation and the extreme violence and torture that the Israelis inflict upon the Palestinian people. So uprisings started as early as 1920, and for a good reason. If your home is being taken over by another people and they're already claiming you have no political rights, you only have some civil and religious rights, what the fuck is that? This is your land. You've lived on it for hundreds and thousands of years, and now this other population is coming and saying they have some God-given ancient right to this land, and even though their ancestors have not lived there for generations, all of a sudden it's their land? No, that's not how indigeneity works. And I think this is where people need to listen to anti-Zionist Jews who will agree that this is not how that works. Oh yeah, so here's another quote that I highlighted. The Zionist movement's leaders understood that under no circumstances, and this is a quote, under no circumstances should they talk as though the Zionist program required the expulsion of the Arabs, because that would cause the Jews to lose the world's sympathy, end quote. But knowledgeable Palestinians were not deceived. Again, that is happening, today. Again, you see Zionists claiming there's no genocide. We're just defending ourselves. We're just trying to exterminate Hamas, blah, 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 blah. No, bullshit, no. All the evidence points to a genocide. If they are able to perform precision attacks in other countries like Lebanon, why can they not perform precision attacks in Palestine? Why is it that when it comes to Palestine, entire hospitals and schools and houses and apartment buildings and neighborhoods are being blown up to bits? Why is it that hundreds and hundreds of civilians are dying each day, or being killed each day rather, not dying? Why is it that they're being killed each day in non-precision attacks, being killed with chemical weapons, which are war crimes, white phosphorus? Why is it that when Israel can go into Lebanon and kill one person with a precision attack, they cannot do the same with Hamas in Palestine, which they are claiming is, hiding out in tunnels and schools and all of that bullshit that they claim? And if you want to talk about human shields, it's actually Israel that uses human shields, and proof of that has come out. There's abundant proof of that from this ongoing genocide, where Israel has attached Palestinians to its vehicles to prevent them from being targeted. They've actually attached human beings to their vehicles, roped them up onto their vehicles to try to prevent their vehicles from being attacked. Like, just ridiculous. But the whole human shields are, claim has been debunked time and time again, and you can find videos about that on YouTube as well. So yeah, so again, yeah, that's basically what the chapter is about. And again, you can relate it back to what's happening today. So if you read up to the end of 33, let me know your thoughts about all of this. Again, I know it's not easy reading. I know it's not enjoyable reading, but I think it's important reading, especially what's going on today. And especially given the recent ruling from the ICJ, the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice in The Hague. So they issued a non-binding advisory opinion rather, recently, and this non-binding advisory opinion by a 15-judge panel states that Israel's occupation of Palestine is unlawful and must end. It states that all states are under the obligation to recognize the occupation as illegal. It states that Israel is committing apartheid and racial segregation. It states that Israel must end all new settlements and evacuate settlers from occupied land. And finally, it stated that Israel must pay reparations to Palestinians. What does this non-binding advisory opinion really mean? I don't know. But, what I do hope that more and more nations will wake up to the fact that, look, this international court has made this statement and we need to stop supporting a genocide. Will that actually happen? I don't know. There are some brave countries in this world that have stood up against Israel and have decided that they'll no longer do business with Israel. They've already stated that if Netanyahu ever comes to their country, he will be under arrest and so on. All of those things. But the United States, who is Israel's biggest puppet, and, the United States, who is Israel's biggest donor, like sending billions and billions and billions of dollars every year to Israel in order for them to carry on with their occupation, their apartheid, their genocide. I don't know how much this means in the end for, Palestinians, but I'm glad that, this was issued. And, this is where the Nazis were tried, right? So we're talking about the ICJ in The Hague. Like, this is a big fucking deal, but unfortunately, I'm not sure how much of a big fucking deal it really is in the end. I'm not an international law expert. I only took one course in international law in law school. So again, not an expert in international law, but what I do remember from that one course I took in this field in law school was, yeah, that, it's hard to really enforce things like this because a lot of it is voluntary. Like, there is no real, body that can really adjudicate and enforce things in the world theater. So unfortunately, that's just the case. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So yeah, so that is the update, I guess, on Palestine. Things had been, I guess one thing that happened recently is Israel bombed Yemen. So the Houthis retaliated against Israel and a drone exploded in Tel Aviv. I don't know how many, if any, people were killed in that explosion, but of course Israel is playing the victim. Oh, look, we were bombed by Yemen, and they went and, attacked Yemen even worse than they were attacked. And yeah, and of course they're going to claim that they have the right to self-defense. But of course they're going to claim that Yemen's attack was unprovoked. It was not unprovoked. If you look at everything that was happening with the ships and all the attacks that Israel was committing against Yemen even before this, it was not unprovoked. But anytime Israel is retaliated against, it acts like it was the victim. It acts like it was an unprovoked attack. And it's going to do the same thing with Lebanon. Like, once Lebanon fights back, once Lebanon strikes Israel, it's going to pretend it was, unprovoked, even though Israel has been attacking Lebanon since October. Like, since October, Israel has been attacking Lebanon. Civilians have been killed in Lebanon. So yeah, but it's going to act like the victim because that's what Israel does. It always plays the victim. So yeah, so, we'll see what happens, I guess, given this new update. But yeah, the genocide continues. So yeah, let's move on. So let's talk about some board game drama, I guess. So, you know, if you're on Twitter or if you're on Board Game Geek, I guess, which I'm banned from currently, from posting there, but if you are on there, you will notice that, maybe you've noticed that Quackalope made a couple of cringy thumbnails and titles for videos recently. So it appears that he was trying to ride on the success of Shut Up and Sit Down's videos about arcs from Leader Games, and so he made one video in which he was simply unboxing the game, and it had like some like sensationalist headline like, oh, did Shut Up and Sit Down get this wrong, like blah blah blah, whatever. And then, you know, talking about how is this game overhyped or whatever, and it was simply an unboxing video. And then in another video he claimed that he won the game by like some magical turn or something, and he's like, how did Shut Up and Sit Down miss this? And he said that in his video title. So again, you know, mentioning another channel's name in his video titles, and you know, that had, you know, board game Twitter in an uproar. Like someone from Shut Up and Sit Down like took a screenshot of his video title, and then a whole bunch of people responded to it, and you know, whatever. My issue is like, why do people in this industry care more about cringy thumbnails and cringy titles to videos than the fact that Quackalope is a fucking Zionist? He is a fucking Zionist, just like the owners of Burnt Island Games and Kids Table Board Gaming. He is a Zionist. How do I know he's a Zionist? Go back to his video that he posted on YouTube entitled I Am a Jew. Again, not all Jews are Zionists and not all Zionists are Jews. I have, like, a lot of my Jewish friends are anti-Zionist. In fact, all of my Jewish friends are anti-Zionist because I would not be friends with a Zionist. So all of my Jewish friends are anti-Zionist. I've dated anti-Zionist Jewish guys before. Like, I would never have any involvement with a Zionist, like, ew, because they are basically the Nazis of today. So if you go back to Quackalope's video that he posted and see who he links to in his comments and who he follows on Instagram on his profile, you will see that he follows some of the most horrid Zionists that there are. He follows Ben Shapiro, he follows Manis Friedman, he follows Noah Tishby, he follows Miem Bialik, and all these other people who have tried and tried again to claim that there is no genocide happening, who have dehumanized the Palestinians by the things they say about Palestine and Palestinians. Like, it's disgusting. And these are the people that Quackalope is promoting. These are the people that Quackalope looks up to and admires as now a Jewish person and a Zionist. Like, have you noticed that the Zionists in this industry won't come out and say that they're Zionists? Like, I wonder why that is. And I wonder why all these people who are supposed champions of diversity, equity, and inclusion and human rights are so silent about Zionists, and why is no one defending Zionists? Maybe because deep down inside, you know, Zionists are the fucking Nazis of today, which they are. Zionism is a colonialist ideology. It is a really disgusting colonialist, nationalist, racist ideology. And if you cannot see that, I do not know what to say to you. Like, you know, pick up this book and start reading it. That's all I can say to you. Pick up this book, read books by Elan Papp. Like, there's so much material out there. There is absolutely no excuse for ignorance. There is no excuse for your ignorance today. There was no excuse in 2021 when you all tried to label me as dangerous for speaking out against Israel and Zionism. And there's certainly no excuse today. Between 2021 and 2024, you have had 3 fucking years to educate yourself. So fucking educate yourselves and speak the truth. Speak the truth that Zionists are evil, condemn Zionism, condemn the genocide, call for a ceasefire. Like, if you so much fucking care about human rights like you claim to do, then you should be calling for a ceasefire. Like you've called for Black Lives Matter, like people have called for, you know, women's rights to be upheld. Like, you've done all of this stuff. Like, people like, you know, and I know I name call a lot, but I'm going to name call especially because recently, as well as these people not condemning Quackalope for being a Zionist and focusing on his stupid cringy titles, recently Suzanne posted something on Twitter. So she posted, and this is the day that the Luthier and Yonder campaigns launched. So this was July 16th. So on July 16th, Suzanne posted, and let me just bring up the screenshot so I don't get it wrong. So she said on July 16th, Kickstarter is a bit of a mess this morning. A campaign featuring a couple of bad actors as previewers and a new game from an should be an, not an anti-vax racist eugenist. Neither should stop the campaigns from existing, but man, I wish backer awareness and care were broader in the hobby. And then she makes a follow-up post. If you're frustrated, I'm not naming and shaming. Fair, I get it, actually, so flip it. And then she makes a bunch of other posts, blah, blah, blah. So people responded to her posts, like asking her, like, who are you talking about? Who are these bad actors? And she would respond, like, it's been discussed so many times, like, do your research, like, find it yourself, blah, 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 right? So on the one hand, you're saying that, people are hiring these bad actors and supporting these bad actors, and, it's so wrong, and how can the industry do this? But on the other hand, you're saying that you don't actually want to name them. Like, you don't want to be held responsible for actually naming them by name in a post. Gee, I wondered why that is. Maybe because, I don't know, maybe she's afraid of being called out for libel, because maybe they're not actually bad actors. So who was she referring to? We can only speculate. What I do know is that on the 16th, the campaign for Luthier was launched. And who are some of the previewers for Luthier? That would be me. I'm one of them. And AntLab Games is another one. And they had issues with AntLab Games, years ago, where Francis made one statement which was taken out of context or misunderstood, and they made a whole big fucking deal of it. And since then, AntLab Games was labeled a bad actor. And that's what these people are like. If you do one thing in their eyes, which is considered a mistake or wrong, they will forever banish you and condemn you. Like, there is no coming back in anyone's eyes if you make one mistake. Did I make a mistake? No, I still stand by the fact that I made no mistakes. And that's because, the reason that these people hate me so much is because I did not just simply shut up and go away. So again, when I went to Universal Studios with stupid Quackalope and took off my mask for a picture, again, photos can be deceiving. We were not in the vicinity of any other humans. Like, the humans were far away from us, but again, photos can be deceiving. But we took off our masks to eat and pose for a photo, and I still will claim to this day that that park was safer than my local grocery store because of the efforts that they were going through in order to sanitize and do all of that. And from research that I've done on Board Game Geek recently, because I've been, collecting a lot of stuff on Board Game Geek since being banned, and looking at old posts in which people are basically, saying shit about me that have remained there to this day, but I got banned for supposedly attacking Zionists in this industry. There were so many posts on Board Game Geek, saying so much shit about me that just simply wasn't true. And to this day, those posts remain. But did I do anything wrong? No. But as someone rightly pointed out and agreed, that even they agreed that the amusement park was safer than their local grocery store, where sanitization was not being taken seriously. But I had so many content creators on my back because Bebo, who was in the industry at that time, though not really, made a big fucking deal about it, even though she herself had gone unmasked to restaurants with her boyfriend, and she had gone unmasked to get her nails done and all of that. But me going to amusement park was such a big fucking deal, like insanity. And then, of course, the second thing was when I called out Helena Kappel for being a Zionist. One thing I noticed recently while doing some Googling on Board Game Geek is someone claimed that I edited the clip, the recording of Helena Kappel's and my conversation. So I just want to make a couple of comments about this conversation, which happened from a few years ago. And I think that the link is still up if you guys want to listen to it. I have no desire to listen to it again, but I can, just give you a basic, quick overview of the conversation. The overview is that I was supposed to review a board game, which I then did not get to preview because I said Palestinian lives matter. I asked Helena Kappel in this conversation repeatedly why it's okay to say Black Lives Matter but not Palestinian lives matter. And she would say repeatedly, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. Like, no, you fucking know. You hate Palestinians. You dehumanize them. You think that they're worthless. And yeah, you sponsor Black family to get brownie points in the industry. So yeah, of course you're going to put Black Lives Matter on your website and then claim saying Palestinian lives matter is political. Whatever, you can see what a Zionist she is from this recording, but someone on Board Game Geek claimed that I edited the recording. No. So if you look at the recording and look at the length of the recording, you will see that it is like 37 minutes and some seconds long. So I'm going to show you a screenshot of the recording from my phone, which I have still on my phone, and you can see from the screenshots that it is the same exact length on this app that I used, which is like the recording app or something like that, recorder or something. It's like some app that I used, and I don't even think you can even splice and edit. I did make a copy of the recording, so there are 2 copies of this recording within the app, but they are both the same exact length and size as you can see from the screenshot. So no, there was no editing done. There was no splicing to make her look bad. And another thing that has been said time and time again about this recording, which I never addressed before, is people are like, I did Helena dirty by revealing to her at a certain point that I was recording the conversation. That makes no fucking sense. If anything, I did her a favor. Now, let me tell you why it's a favor. Because if I had not told her that she was being recorded after a certain amount of time, she would have let even her worst true colors shine, like show. Like that's what people do when they do not realize that they are being recorded. They then are more uninhibited. And she, as a result of being told she was being recorded, obviously was going to try to be more diplomatic in what she was saying. If I did not reveal to her that she was being recorded, I'm pretty sure you would have gotten much worse from her than her simply saying, I don't know what the difference is between Palestinian Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter, when being asked that question over and over again. There is no fucking difference. So she had a favor done when I told her that she was being recorded. I did not need to tell her she was being recorded because New York State and Canada are one-party consent states. You can record a conversation without the other party knowing if you are a party to that conversation. So I did not need to tell her she was being recorded, and I did her a fucking favor when I told her she was being recorded. So if you listen to that recording and you think I had a gotcha moment when I told her she was being recorded, no, it was a fucking favor to her, in fact. Like, I shouldn't have even told her that she was being recorded, and her true colors would have come out even more so if she had not been told that she was being recorded. But people in this industry lack common sense. People in this industry have no fucking common sense. And that is why they are in certain professions, and I am in a certain profession. Like, call that arrogant, call that elitist, which I've been called before, call it whatever you want, but that's the fucking truth. Like, so many people in this industry cannot make basic inferences. They cannot come to basic conclusions through logical reasoning. So many people in this industry just lack basic logical skills. Like, seriously, like just the most basic of logic skills. They just lack them. It's so easy for someone who's educated, who is open-minded, to see all the double standards that exist in this industry when it comes to Palestine and how Muslims and people of Arab descent are treated, or people of Middle Eastern descent are treated in this industry. And I've talked about that at length before. I've talked about it when it comes to, talking about trans people, or when it comes to talking about Black people, but everything goes out the window when it comes to talking about me, a Muslim woman, because, I don't deserve the same rights as everyone else in this industry. I'm allowed to be bullied and harassed, but no one else is, apparently, So I've talked about all of that at length. So with the recent ICJ advisory opinion, let's see if anyone now decides to come out and call out Zionism, or are they still going to just make posts about bad actors and talk about, cringe YouTube thumbnails and cringe YouTube titles, instead of talking about a genocide that is actually happening. People who claim to care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and will, every couple of months talk about what great work they're doing behind the scenes for diversity, equity, and inclusion, yet have not yet condemned the genocide, have not yet called for a ceasefire. Like, none of these people have actually written on their profile, ceasefire now. None of these people have called what's happening in Palestine a genocide. Suzanne has never once posted about Palestine. If you go through her Twitter feed, not a single fucking post about Palestine, not one. Just go through her entire Twitter feed and you won't find a single post. The only thing you will find is many, many months ago, there's a very well-known video game developer who is Arab, and he made a post which she then made about herself. The post was about how you should not have to rely on Arabs and Muslims to educate you about Palestine. She took that post, quote tweeted it, and made it all about herself. So here's a post being made about Palestine and how, there's all this burden on Muslims and Palestinians and Arabs to explain what is going on, and she fucking made it about herself. That's the only time where she posted something remotely close to, having to do with this genocide, because she's fucking stupid and misunderstood and decided to turn it into something else. I'm just, again, you know, all you can see time and time again is this industry's double standards, hypocrisies, and how stupid these people really are, and how these people do not deserve to be worshipped. No one should be worshipped. No one should be worshipped in this industry. Everyone is flawed. We are all fucking human. No one should be worshipped. Like, people need to stop worshiping, you know, influencers and content creators and focus on what's important in this life. I'm not important. These people are not important. No one's fucking important enough to worship in this industry where you will just, you know, come to their defense or whatever on Twitter as a warrior anytime anyone criticizes them, and, you know, start harassing and bullying other people if you perceive, you know, someone to be attacking them or whatever, which has happened to me time and time again. Anytime I ever stood up for myself, you know, all of Suzanne's minions would come after me and start posting shit about me. But none of that was ever perceived to be harassment or bullying. It's only when it happens to them that it's harassment and bullying. So yeah, but you know, these people just don't give a fucking shit about Palestinians or Arabs or Muslims. Like, there's a genocide happening and not a single statement to this day. So let's see if the ICJ advisory opinion changes that. I doubt it, but you know, you never know. Maybe because an international court has issued a big advisory opinion, maybe they'll be like, oh, it's actually safe to say, yeah, there's a genocide happening, and yeah, there's apartheid happening. Maybe now we can actually say something, and you know, but really doubtful, because there's still a lot of Zionists in this industry, and they don't want to be called out by their Zionist buddies. They don't want to offend their Zionist buddies. So yeah, so they still to this day are fucking Zionist shills and sellouts. And until they speak up against Zionism, the root cause of the genocide, the root cause of Palestinian suffering, the root cause of apartheid in Palestine, until they call out Zionism, they are fucking Zionist shills and sellouts, and that's just the way it is. Sorry, but you can't, you know, be all against apartheid in South Africa and not say anything about Zionism. No, there's a reason that all of the people who were against apartheid in South Africa see Zionism for what it is, because it's the same fucking thing. So let's see if any of these Zionist shills stop being shills. You know, I would be very surprised if that happens, but you know, I like surprises, so let's see if that happens. But again, I doubt it. So yeah, so that is my rant of the week. So let's move on. So this week's question of the week is going to be super duper specific, which is inspired by Trolls and Princesses. So I really enjoy this game a lot. And if you watch my, you know, kind of not very cohesive explanation of this game, you'll understand that this is a worker placement game, and you're also building out your own network of caves, and there's like, you know, quite a bit going on. And I want to know if you know of any other game where you're building out your own area, but there's also a main board that you can go to and take actions and have kind of, you know, player interaction with other players as well. Like, very unique, I feel like. I don't know if there's any other games like that, and I would really love to know if there are, because I really enjoyed this. Like, I cannot think of any other games where you're building out your own area with tiles but still have a main board where you can engage in actions with other players. Like, super duper cool. So if you know of any games that are similar, that are like that, please let me know, because I would absolutely love to check them out. So that is the question of the week, and until next week, bye.